When you talk about language, if you think of language as the entirety of linguistic system of communication, you can divide the language into certain subsystems within the same language. These subsystems are defined based on different variables. So let's call it a way of speaking or a way of using language. A way of speaking could be defined based on your region in the country where the language is spoken, for example. In that case, it's usually referred to as dialect. Sometimes there is a way of speaking that is defined by your gender. For example, you could say women speak in this way, men are more likely to speak this way. You could have that there is a social class that speaks in a certain way, like working class people speaking in this way, or highly educated people, or even you could have a way of speaking that is specific to a certain location, like you could have academic speech, for example. So the same person could have a professor who is from a working class family, and once he's in the academic setting, he uses academic language. And then once he's back with his family or friends, which might be more working class, he might even switch his way of speaking, right? There are different ways of speaking, and these different ways of speaking, first of all, have different names. And second of all, they are not defined based on the same standards. Sometimes it's based on gender, sometimes based on social class, sometimes based on occupation, sometimes it's based on region. You could say it could be a variety of language which is used for purposes such as religious service, for example. Considering how diverse these different ways of speaking are, we use an umbrella term which is called variety to refer to all these forms of language. A dialect is a variety in the same sense that a sociolect is a variety, or an accent is a variety. The word variety is so broad that it can cover all of these ways of speaking, or you could also say ways of using language. For example, in literature, you could have certain styles of writing or certain schools of literature. Those could also be called varieties. You know, sometimes you speak the same language differently in different situations or to different people. Like to your siblings, you might be very casual. To your professor or your employer, you might be more formal. So there are different degrees of formality that you use in a particular language are also different varieties of language. So you could define variety based on degree of formality. And when you talk about varieties, usually there are certain varieties that are more often mentioned, like dialect, for example, or the word style, or the word register, or the word genre. These are all used as terms to define varieties of language. The word genre, for example, is often studied in contrast with register and style, but also in a bigger context in comparison with such other terms as dialect, text type, sub-language, discourse, and the like. Style, register, and genre seem to be more closely relevant to each other than to any other term, but style and register are very close, sometimes indistinguishable. They may use interchangeably about the same concept across researchers. So some people might be more comfortable with register and others with the style. The other thing that is important is that when you talk about sociolinguistics, there is a particular methodology that I have mentioned in previous videos. There is a particular approach to the study of language in its social context, which you could call sociolinguistics, but the researchers themselves would rather call it linguistics, a lot of them at least. So that methodology is called variationist research, variationist linguistics. In variationist linguistics, the variety of language that is very highlighted is called style. Like there is a lot of research about the concept of style. Basically so much so that you could say variationist linguistics itself started with research by William Labov on different styles of English. There is another interesting researcher, Biber, who has done a bunch of research on register. This video is an introduction to what I'm going to continue to do, maybe a new season on varieties of language, and today's video is going to be only an introduction. Probably all those varieties, each of them will be covered in a separate video, and there may be even more varieties that I may come across and want to cover. We have covered certain varieties already. Dialect, we have a video on dialect, we have a video on accent, we have a video on idiolect,